All righty, all righty. We are live. We are live. Hello, hello, everybody. Come on in. Please like, share, comment on this session tonight of part 2 of Journey to Healing. I'm so excited to have this conversation tonight with my friend, my sister, Zakiya Brown. The CEO, founder, operating officer, whatever you want to call her, extraordinaire of Pivotal Growth Consulting. So once again, come on in. Um, I am Stephanie Crawl, Dr. Stephanie Crawl with Free Your Mind Enterprises, as well as Refreshed and Revealed. So we're so excited for folks to join us, whether you're joining us on one of the Facebook groups or on YouTube. We thank you so much for joining. I'm asking you once again to like and share this broadcast. Also, follow us on all three pages. Once again, Free Your Mind Enterprises Facebook, Refreshed and Revealed Facebook group, and then Refreshed Revealed YouTube channel. So once again, thank you all. So to start off this evening, I love to do what we call check-ins to see how each other is doing. So Z, tell us, how are you doing on this day?
I am good. I'm good. I am so good. I'm good. I don't even. It's hard to explain when you're in a good space, a good mental space, a good energy space. I had a vacation this past weekend, so I got a chance to rest and relax and hang out with good people and have some good food, great food, good laughs. So I'm in a good space, so I'm good.
That's so exciting. And I would have to say, I'm going to say this before we even get started tonight. But if you do not follow Zakiya, please start following her because she is doing 39 days of healing, and that's so befitting for what we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about that at the beginning of this and talk about it again at the end because there'll be more people that join the broadcast. So just tell folks what you're currently doing as it relates to the 39 days and what it means for you. And then if you're able to put in the comments how people can start following you to see what you're sharing out.
So, what I'm doing is I'm celebrating the past year. So, 39 to 39 is this year, this in the August 29th. I love it. I'll be 39 years old. And what I wanted to do, and I try to do something every year just to remind myself of how far I've come, what I've gone through, but then also like the life lessons I've learned throughout that time. So, I kicked it off, I believe, last Thursday because it's 39 days until the 29th. And each day I'm either highlighting something I learned, a good memory, or just some fun I've had. So far I've talked about like my first time going to the New England area. Went to Maine last year for my birthday, actually. And it was a good experience. It was a great to be in a different area. I love to travel. Travel is my sanctuary. So that was a great thing. But then I also talked about how I've healed along the way or the things I've learned. The idea that where I'm from, according to certain statistics, certain researchers, I should not be where I am today. So I celebrate the fact that I've made it this far and the gratitude I try to practice each day because I have made it this far. So it's just really a moment for me to spend time being intentional with reflection of who I am, who I've become, what I've gone through, how far I've made it. And then just that celebration of that joy, the joy that wakes me up every day and tells me I get to relive my purpose over and over again because I'm still here to live it out.
Awesome. Awesome. I want for you all to make sure that you follow Zakiya. And I just get so excited. I've known Zakiya now for, what is it, 12, 13 years? Oh my gosh. I feel like, oh my goodness. It'll be officially 13 years like tomorrow, the 30th. Because I started at Central in Residence Life July. It was like this week of July in 2008. Oh my God. Oh, I'm so extra. But Just being able to see the growth and development of you and where you are now, and even reading those stories of over the 39 days, just I feel like I get to know you more and more. Having you share that. So once again, for everyone that is joining us tonight, we will make sure that we share Zakiya's different social media handles so that you can follow her and see all of the amazing things that she's sharing. I encourage you to definitely like, share, comment, and learn from this dynamic woman that I have had the opportunity to be blessed by throughout my life. So this is one of her social media following places, Zakiya Brown, Pivotal Growth Consulting. And we'll once again post more as we go through the evening. So Zakiya, as we jump into our conversation, so journey to healing, one of the things that I think that is so important for us as a people is, one, to recognize that we all have been through various aspects of trauma, or various situations and circumstances in our life that it has affected us, whether physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, all at one time, or different facets of that. And so many times when we're experiencing those things, it's very easy to just kind of live and settle on what has happened to you and not experience the healing that's necessary. And as we allow ourselves to experience the healing, then we can find ourselves progressing to the next phase, and understanding that healing is a process, is not a one-time event. And so to start off our conversation, Zakiya, please describe for us the area of healing that you will be sharing with us on tonight.
It took me a minute to figure out which one I want to talk about, right? Because 39 years almost in like a month, that's a lot of things that we endure, we experience. So one thing that what I'll talk about today will be the experience with sexual violence, sexual assault, and the different ways it shows up and has shown up in my life.
Okay. That will be definitely, I know, a heavy topic, because there's been various people that's watching tonight, or those that may have, friends that they're connected with that have experienced sexual assault, sexual violence in various ways. And so just how that can impact you and impact those around you. So, Zakiya, if you don't mind sharing, tell us from that lens of sexual assault or sexual violence, tell us your story to whatever extent feels comfortable for you to share.
So, so for me, it's always been a part of my life, and I say that because as a kid, I watched it. So I saw domestic violence growing up, and it was quite heavy, because as a child, as a young girl, you're not really sure how that will impact you as you become a woman. So for me, it began from my earliest memory, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and it went on for years. But what I started to recognize was what I saw in the home. It began to define how I interacted, or how I showed up outside in my neighborhood, in my dating relationships, things of that nature. So some of us probably know that young women, specifically Black women, are sexualized and are given adult qualifications or identifiers as early as 13. So young women who are identified as Black, African American, begin to develop really young age. And in that, you start hearing certain things, specifically me, I can't speak for all women, but I started to hear things as early as 13 years old was, you're going to be real sexy when you get older. You're going to be bad when you get older. Or I was having people compliment me on my walk. At 13 years old, I have no idea how a walk can entice anybody, but the catcalling, we have names for all of this now, but in the early 90s, there was no name. It was the whistling or whatever the case might have been. And I'm hearing all these different things at 13 to where it did not influence me in a way that made me feel insecure. It actually empowered me. So it made me realize how much power the female femininity actually has. So the fact that my body caught the attention of grown men. So these also weren't like young kids my age. I was catching the attention of grown men in my neighborhood, well over the age of 18, specifically individuals who should not have been anywhere near me. And my parents did a really good job with making sure we just was aware and cautious, but I used that to my benefit. I wouldn't use my body to my benefit in a way to where I was being promiscuous, but I'm a flirt. I'm a flirt with you because I know what you want is me sexually. So I'm gonna get what I want out of you. But in that essence, when I started to actually become sexually active, I never had a chance to connect with my sexuality. I never had a chance to connect with my femininity. And in that, I was using sex as a power. And I was finding myself to, again, what we call now to be coercive. So I was being coerced into sex. I was being guilted into sex. I was being convinced that that was what I wanted because I liked that person. And again, thinking about this now, I'm like, I spent majority of my late teens, probably a good portion of my 20s, not truly understanding that none of my sexual experiences have been some form of sexual assault. It was some form of sexual violence where I did not have complete control over my own sexual identity, my own sexuality, my own sexual decisions, because it was always being pursued by a man, a young guy. And I was giving in to the coercion of it. And even thinking back to where I was 16 years old and there was a guy who was like 24, 25. Eventually found out he was a married man with kids and all those other things. But it was like that experience began to shape a lot of who I had become. And all of that being lied to as a 16-year-old, and you find out that the guy that you think you love is married with kids, and his kids, he told you his kids were his niece and nephew, and you find out when the wife calls you and tells you, oh, you thought he was single. No, we're married. I began then to actually create a very cold heart. Like I did not allow anyone to get close to me. So I really, at that point, I began to understand the concept of sex without emotion. I began to understand the true power of the female body. I began to understand how I began to understand a lot of different things that my mom would tell me in regards to you never do anything for free. You never just give it away without getting something back. You never just make yourself so available without, in a way, like having them pay for it, whatever that might have looked like. But again, now that we have this language, now that we have all these different definitions for sexual violence, I'm recognizing that I spent a large part of my youth entrenched in a culture of sexual assault, sexual violence, rape, and different concepts in that aspect.
Wow, thanks so much for sharing. I know that being, friends for so long and hearing different stories, every time you share with me, I learn different aspects and something new. And I think that one of the things that's the most powerful is how we may hear certain messages or how we may, be recipients of certain interactions and engagement, and then how that starts forming in our psyche of how we start rationalizing it or making sense of it or not making sense of it and just indulging and engaging and just being somewhat present in it because we don't know how else, what to do. And so as you have continued to kind of learn and evolve and gain insight over these past several years. So you said at the age of 16, you had some very profound lessons. So doing my math, that's 23, 23 years ago. Gotta get me straight. 23. So 23 years since then. Kind of share for us, what are some of the barriers or setbacks that you've had to overcome personally or professionally while on this journey of kind of this experience?
Oh wow. So personally, the setbacks, I would have to say, I struggle with allowing men in. Like I really have, I say I struggle because it's still a process. It's still a journey. It's still something I'm working through, but I struggle with trusting men, and for different reasons. So that's a different conversation, but I struggle with trusting men to get into me emotionally, to actually be connected to me in a very deep way, to where I question their intentions. I question whether or not they truly are wanting to be with me as a person, and all of the stuff I've gone through and all of my greatness and stuff like that, or are they really there because of the sexuality of me? Again, I've always been told I'm sexy. I've always been told, and that's the thing too, you start recognizing different things when you grow up in a certain environment. I probably cannot tell you how many times I was told I was beautiful growing up, but I can tell you every single time I was told I was sexy. Those two have different meanings. So for me, like I have a friend now who will tell me all the time, like, you just so sexy, you just so sexy. And my instinct is, I know, because I've heard it my entire time, my entire life. I know. And then of course their response is, you just so nonchalant about it, because it doesn't matter to me. Like, I know I'm sexy. Am I beautiful? Am I wanted? Do you desire me outside of the sexuality of me? Do you desire my mind? Do you desire my energy, my presence? Do you desire me in my totality? Because the sexy part, I know that. I figured that out at the age of 13. Here I am, 39. Do you really want me, or do you want the sexuality of me? And that's where that's where I struggle with allowing myself to get to know people, in the dating aspect. Like, show me more than me being sexy. And I get it. Men and women are different. Men are visual, all that good stuff. Absolutely. But it's hard for me to believe that every single man that I keep running across has not understood that concept of, you calling me sexy does not make me want to be with you. That doesn't give me any type of strength or grounding or even any connection to say, I want to get to know more about you as a person. Because what you just told me was, you are still focused on my appearance, my sexuality, my identity as a woman, but yet you haven't thought about, or you aren't fully ready to embrace me as an individual. So that's something I've had to work through. But then also on the other aspect is, because I've been told I'm sexy, I struggle in the workplace because I've had supervisors who've made passes and advances towards me. I work in higher education. I've had students make passes and advances towards me. And what people don't realize is it makes me extremely uncomfortable, because now I have to be extra careful of like what I wear. Like, I'm actually, you know how much time it takes me to get dressed in the morning? It takes me so much time, because in my mind, I'm trying to think of, if I put this on, will this draw sexual attention to me? Or will this just make me show up in this space as Zakiya? Not Zakiya as being sexy, but this Zakiya. Can I be present? Can I be me in a space without somebody seeing me as being sexy? Someone being attracted to whatever it is. And recently, and I think I've shared this with with you in some conversations, I'm looking at like changing my wardrobe. And I've lost weight recently. And someone had to point out, like, you can't wear those clothes anymore because they're too big for you. And I'm like, but it helps me hide whatever it is people think is sexy about me, because they see that before they see me. I hear that before I hear, wow, Zakiya, you're amazing. You're great. You're smart. You're brilliant. I don't hear that first. I hear you're sexy. So I've tried to do whatever I could to hide that, because after a while, thank you. Now what? It's always in my mind, I'm going to be polite. Thank you very much. But then I'm thinking, okay, now what? what is not now? What's your angle? What do you want? What are you looking for? And I've had that where in the professional world, either I sleep with somebody and I get promoted, or I got promoted because I slept with somebody, because everyone sees it as she's sexy. I'm not sleeping with them. I don't want to. I rather, if I can't earn it, honestly, I don't want it. But that's always been a struggle for me. So, yeah.
No, that is so, thank you once again. Everything that you're sharing, I'm going to keep thanking you, because I think that there's so many people that have had these experiences of having been told different messages, or having seen different messages, or different experiences in their life, and then they have adapted to it and have allowed those experiences to dictate or define more of who they are. So kind of bridging off of that particular question, which was not, as you know me, I have structured questions, but then I have my other questions that I just kind of gain as we go along. But something you had said regarding how you show up into these spaces and having to, reconsider wardrobe and all of that, based on this particular topic or this particular experiences of your life, how has that shaped your identity? How are you able to show up authentically you, knowing that you're trying to wrestle with all these potential messages of, am I going to look this way? Is somebody going to say this about me? It's like, how do you then formulate who you are and who you show up to be in these places, so that you're healthy and whole, or moving towards that healing process?
So a few different things came to my mind. You know how you have all these amazing people you follow on social media, and there are these great older individuals, like 40, 50 years old people that I like to follow on social media. And I would hear this narrative of, as you get older, you just don't give it. You don't care no more. That's where I'm at. Like, I'm knocking on, I'm gonna keep saying this. I look good for 39. I look amazing for almost 39. And in that, I'm at a place too where I don't care. I can't control how you think about me, what you think about me, where I can't. And at some point, I think I was trying to change who I was, or modify who I was, or who I was intended to be, to make sure I set the image I wanted others to see of me. So because I was told that I was sexy, or whatever case might, they have these opinions or assumptions of how I've been promoted in different places, I would modify my appearance. I would modify like everything just to appease, to try to water down what it was that they might have assumed. And at this point, I don't really care. Like, I can't, it's exhausting to shapeshift every single time someone has an opinion about who you are, who they think you are, who you should be. I can't do that anymore. The other part of that, though, is it's part of the healing process, is becoming more comfortable with who you are created to be. And I've always known within myself that I was meant to be different. I've always known that I was meant to push back against either a norm, a system, or an opinion, or whatever the case might be. If you really know me, you know I am a fighter. I will die on the sword. I will die on the heel. Whatever it is, I'm going to fight. Sometimes I should not be fighting, but I'm a fighter. And in that, I can't not be that person. Like, I also believe that I was created to be a fighter, because I feel like I'm also an advocate. So in my fight, I'm advocating for other individuals who have been silenced, who have been ignored, who have been taken away from this world too soon, because of the fact that we have these certain opinions and perceptions and ideas of who they should be. And they spent time trying to figure out how to appease other people, and they became exhausted, and they're no longer with us. So I feel like in that, that was part of my healing journey. I know that I'm meant to be here longer. I know that I'm meant to be a voice for someone. I know I'm meant to be present in a boardroom or anywhere on social media for someone who needs to be heard, but yet can't find their voice, or haven't been empowered to find their voice. So in all of that, it's the healing journey. I got to figure out how to be me. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but I'm too old to change for you now at this point. I mean, if you really want me to change, that should have happened like 20 years ago at this point. This is it. You like it or you don't. And if you don't, oh well.
I love that. I love that. If you're just tuning in, you're on part 2 of Journey to Healing. I'm Dr. Stephanie Craw of Free Your Mind Enterprises and Refreshed and Revealed. And I am with my special guest, my friend, my sister, Zakiya Brown, who's the founder, CEO of Pivotal Growth Consulting. And so we've just, had amazing conversation thus far regarding her journey to healing as it relates in the area of sexual violence that she's experienced in her life. And so, Z, I have another question for you that is a pivot from one of our pre-scheduled questions. In the process that you have been going through on your journey, what does healing really look like for you? Because I think that sometimes people can say, okay, healing is, I went to counseling, or healing is, I got this medication. Healing is forgiveness of somebody. But for you, what does healing look like through this journey of going through or having been through sexual violence in your life?
Uncomfortable conversations. That's the best way I can explain it for me, has been uncomfortable conversations. I mean, and a lot of it has been with myself. So it took me even time to say that I had experienced sexual violence my entire life. I even as of recent in 2017. So there have been several moments to where I hid those different things. I buried them somewhere deep down and did not address them or acknowledge them. And again, Black community, women, we talk about the strong Black woman ideology. And if you had that strong mother, grandmother, aunt, neighbor, mentor, whomever, you picked up their characteristics, their behaviors, their traits, their mannerisms, and all of what you would see is something happens to them as painful, and they figure out how to push through and they just keep going. I had to actually have that difficult conversation of, is it healthy for me to push through and keep going? Is it necessary for me to push through and keep going? And of course, if you are, as a history person, I'm also a history person. I love history, especially Black history. And if you think about the history aspect of it, where Black women were sexualized and sexually assaulted by slave masters and then forced to be sexually assaulted by the Black men, we had to push through to survive. Because if we did not subject ourselves to that type of violence, either we were killed or our families were killed. So we actually sacrificed ourselves to protect our families and our communities. I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to protect anybody besides myself. But I had to have a difficult conversation with myself to say, Zakiya, who are you protecting? And why are you protecting them? So for you to be free, for you to live fully in your identity, in your purpose, and the plan that is created for you by God, you have to let go and stop protecting people. But then what harm or what damage has been done that you need to undo? I had to have that difficult conversation with myself, that uncomfortable conversation with myself, to recognize that everything I had gone through in my entire life had played a role in why I'm still single. I'm single and looking, but I'm still single. I have attachment, like I have a fear of attachment. So I have a fear of commitment. But you can't recognize that. You can't begin to heal if you don't identify what your barriers are, what your trauma is. I recognized at some point that I was dating individuals through trauma bonding. So we can sit here and go back and forth with each other about the pain we've gone through. That's how we connected. When I start healing and they weren't healing, I can see myself pulling back like, okay, I went through the trauma, but I don't want to stay there. I don't want to stay in the trauma. I went through it, but I'm not looking to make that my home. Like the address, it was temporary. It's boarded up, and I done moved out the whole entire state. I'm in a different region of the country. But I had to have that uncomfortable conversation with myself to recognize that that's what I was doing. I was looking for people I had to heal. And instead of me healing myself, I'm associating myself with people who are broken so I can heal them. So it was uncomfortable conversations, so many different things that you recognize and realize that if you take the time to ask yourself, you can go to therapy, that's great. I recommend therapy, absolutely. But if you can't identify, then you can't communicate to the therapist what your issues are. If you don't know some of the roots of where some of the things have happened to you that's causing barriers and blocks in your life for you to progress, then it's going to be even more difficult. And you spend a whole lot of money to go speak to a therapist, and you haven't even actually started to do the work yourself. So for me, I had to be uncomfortable. I had to have uncomfortable conversations.
That is so powerful, because one of the things that you had said is like, who are you protecting, or stop protecting, the people that had actually, violated you. And when you actually think about that, the choice, and I'm not minimizing the experience of having to voice the fact that you experienced the particular trauma, or having to tell someone that you've been sexually assaulted, but also thinking about the protection of that person who did it is also not protecting those who they may hurt again, or they may hurt in another space. And not saying that should be on the weight of any person that is a survivor of any sort of trauma, like, that I didn't say anything, so now they went out and did, because that's even more trauma on that person. But I think that hitting on the notion of, who are you protecting and why are you protecting them, does answer some questions for yourself. It does begin to peel back and uncover some various things. And I know that you've done and are doing some amazing research in that area, as well, of helping people unpack all of those different narratives within our community of, do I want to put another, person of color, or another, Black man, if that was the offender, the offender to you, do I want to put them in prison, and do I want to have all those things? But also understanding that this process of healing is about you caring about you in that moment, and not seeing that as a selfish action by any means, which sometimes that's what it can feel like. Well, if I do it, then that's, what about everybody else? But what about you? Who was the voice for you? Because I'm sure that was not that person's, potentially was not that person's first time that they had, committed violent acts of some sort. So I think that's important.
And that's where it started. So the incident that happened in 2017 was the beginning of me recognizing that I had to stop protecting people. Because even to this day, I haven't told anyone who the person was, and for different reasons. But I'm protecting them, but just different reasons. But even then, when I did share with certain individuals of what took place, it still felt like I was there by myself. It was still like, well, who's speaking for me? Who is advocating for me? Who is standing for me? And that's when I was like, I can't keep looking for people to do this for me. They haven't been there to do this for me. So I got to do this for myself. But in that, it's like, well, what is that? What is that for myself? And for me, it was, I have to protect me more than I have to protect that person, or those individuals, or that system, or that organization. I gotta do this for me. And that's where the entire journey began, was when I tell you, when God gives you a chance to heal and to be by yourself in isolation, for you to recognize who you are supposed to be, that's when you start realizing who loves you. That's when you start realizing who's been protecting you. That's when you start realizing your worth and your value. Because 2018, a cycle of depression, a cycle of insecurity, a cycle of anxiety, every single thing you could think of, to where every emotion that you can think of that comes with trauma is what I felt in the beginning year of 2018. For the first half of 2018. Because when stuff happens and you go through trauma and you try to figure out, what is my next? Who am I? Like, certain things were taken from me. And now I'm asking a question like, well, who am I at this point now? I don't have the things that to me was important, and now it's not there. So who am I? And just that cycle. Who was it? Jonathan McReynolds cycles. That cycle just kept going for 6 entire whole months. That cycle just kept going, kept going, kept going. And at some point, I just had to say, like, God, just help me get through this. Help me learn what it is you want me to learn so I can get through this, because I can't keep doing this. And there, it was never to the point of thoughts of suicide, but it definitely felt isolation. It felt abandonment. It felt like, to me, and this isn't the truth, but it felt like the world turned its back on me. And I was by myself trying to figure out how to move forward. But I also recognize even now later that was God saying, I need to pull you out. I needed you to heal from everything you had gone through before, so I can really show you what I called you to do. And in all of that, my God, it was, that's why I say, when you ask me how am I doing, I'm in a good space. I'm good. That joy, I am so good. I'm grateful. Baby, listen. I feel like Auntie Tab right now, baby. Come on, listen, get on in here. I feel I'm really good, because that healing needed to take place, but I had to be isolated for me to recognize that I had so much trauma, so much pain, so much anger, resentment, again, insecurities. I was like, it's so much. When the mind starts to go in a direction that was not intended for it to go, and you begin to see things that really are not there. You start to question everyone's intention. You start to second guess. I started thinking people were setting me up. Like that's how bad it was. I thought people were blacklisting me. I thought there were certain individuals who were not really here with good intentions. That's how serious I had gotten, just trying to get through the trauma I had gone through. So once I just said, God, I surrendered. God, just get me through this. And whatever lesson you need me to learn, I'm going to learn it. I'm going to use it, because apparently you need me to go through something to get ready for where I'm about to go. And he did. He sure did. He did in so many ways. So many ways.
It as you were talking, it just made me think about the whole notion of kind of our perspective as we're going through the journey, as we come to that place of recognition of having those, as one of our mentor coaches would say, having those tough talks with yourself, and recognizing, like, why am I here? How did I get here? Are there aspects of me being here that were my fault?
Right.
Are there aspects of being here that were truly the fault of others, things done to me? Because, and I say that because sometimes we can find ourselves in situations, and it's so externally generated of they did, how could they, why did somebody let them? And then we also don't recognize and realize, there are some places where we made some missteps and some misjudgments. And that's not to do, by any means victim blame, because that I would never say to someone like, oh, well, you shouldn't wear that dress somewhere, and then that's the reason why no, that's not that. But more so us asking ourselves questions as we're going through that isolation point. Because one of the things that I love about God is that he will hold the mirror up to you and will say, daughter, son, look at this. Does this look like me? And if when we look in that mirror of the Father and we don't look like him, then that means there's some things that we have to ask him to clean up within us.
Yes.
And that's so important as we're going through that healing journey. And I love what you said of saying, like, Father, what lessons do you want me to learn? Because sometimes that's a place that people can't get to, because they're like, this is happening. Why is this happening? And then, the real angry at God, because that was something that our other guest spoke about on Tuesday. Like, she was angry with God and was about to literally walk away from God, because it's like, God, you're letting this happen to me. I didn't, and I think that having that anger and being honest with God is many times the best place to really begin. Like he's like, yep, I already knew you were angry. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. Let's get through it. Let's do the deep dive, so that we can get on the other side of this particular place. So that that was very powerful, that you had said about the lessons learned. And so actually, that was going to be my next question. So if there's anything else you want to add, to this question of what have been some of the lessons that you learned on this journey, once again, you can repeat or elaborate, or if there's other things you want to share.
One thing I've learned that I really enjoy is healing is messy. I don't know. I love being uncomfortable. I love this being uncomfortable, and I say that because, and I think I had to learn that, because it makes you question, why are you uncomfortable? So it's a I like challenges. So if I'm uncomfortable, I'm sitting back and I'm using counseling techniques like mindfulness. Like, okay, why am I uncomfortable? Why am I anxious right now? Why did that just trigger me? What's going on? Where did that come from? And that has been some of the biggest. I've enjoyed that part. A lesson is it's messy, and that messiness, you got to check yourself in a second. Like, okay, wait, hold on. Where is this coming from? Where is this aggressive response coming from? Where is this defensive coming from? Why did you shut down? And that messiness is like, okay, this came from, someone told me when I, probably about maybe 18, 19-year-old, I talk too much. So I found myself being quiet a lot. And people are like, you're so quiet. Well, I was told before that I talk too much. So now I don't want to say anything. Or someone said, you got to be softer. So I go away, come back, and they're like, well, you a little too soft. Well, I mean, what you want me to do? So it's that messiness of, why am I this way? What is the root of it? And then unpacking all of that. Another lesson is be careful of the energy or the people who are being drawn to you. And I recognize I have a certain type of energy. And a part of my energy is as a healer. I have the energy, I have the ability to help people who've been hurt actually recognize their value and their worth. So I'm a healer, but it requires energy. So I have the energy that draws them to me, but yet I have to exert energy to help them through that process. And in that, they end up being either, again, our mentor coach told us, you either a partner, a purpose partner, or you're a parasite. Some people can be they can be purpose partners all day because they help you learn so much more about yourself. But then some of them are parasites. They pulling stuff from you and they're not giving anything back. And I had to really be careful with that. And that was the biggest lesson learned, because I love to help people. I love for people to see their worth, their value, and to love themselves. So if you tell me you don't feel good about yourself, I want to come on, let me hug you. Let me bring you some love. Let me encourage you and empower you. But yet some people will take that for granted, and they will leech onto you for that to be a continuation of you pouring into them, opposed to them learning how to pour into themselves. So that has been the biggest lesson learned as well. And the other part is just in regards to how I was able to, for whatever reason, make amends is coming to mind. But the sexual violence that I experienced or seen in my life, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned from that was, I don't owe you anything. You're not obligated to anything. And I can tell you no and be okay with you being in your feelings. I told you no. But that was something I had to come to, because at some point I felt bad for saying no. So with someone with proposition, I felt if I said no, I just felt obligated to do something. And again, like I said earlier on, like I didn't enjoy sex. I learned how to do it without emotion. So I wasn't connecting to it at all. And even in that aspect, it was, I wasn't able to connect to my sexuality as a young girl. So one of the lessons learned, I got to tell you no. And even in that no, like it's really for me. That's for me. I'm not worried about you. You be okay. And if it's not me, somebody else will find you. You can they'll entertain you, but I can say no and be okay with that.
Something as you were talking that came to mind is that you cannot judge the fruit unless you know the root.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because you had talked about, because there were moments like when in our 13 years of being friends, there were those times where I'm like, why is she not smiling? Why is she not saying anything? Or what's going on? But not knowing that someone had told you, like, stop talking so much. So that was a seed that was sown into you. And so the fruit that I was then engaging and interacting with, I made initial judgments about, like, well, she just mean, she don't want to talk, she don't want to say nothing, and blah blah blah. And so that is so much that we tend to do, is that we walk around judging people, judging the fruit we see, but we don't know the root. We don't know what's under the surface of what it is, what seed was sown into them, as to the reason why they're showing up the way that they show up. And I think that that is something for us to all be mindful of more, to really make sure that we're getting to know people. And no, we may not ever have a chance to get to know everyone's, backstory as to what they've been through. But it is important for us to be mindful, because we know ourselves, we know all the things that we've been through and how we show up and how we don't show up, or why we may not always have a smile, or why we may be a little bit protected in a place. And we once again, we once again don't walk around, telling our story or having it, postered on our back. And so that just, to me, shows that it's important for us to show a little bit of grace. There it is. Somebody said that. Yes. Thanks. Everyone deserves grace. And that's something that is important for us to really make sure that we are showing up with. My next question for you is, what resources have you used, if any, to help advance your healing process?
So one thing I try to do, and I'm terrible at it, is journaling. I just can't stay consistent with it at all. But it helps when my thoughts are overwhelming me. So there are moments, again, because healing is a process, and there are moments. I'm sorry, the dog wants attention, but he's doing too much. There are moments where I still have to go back and remind myself, like, that's not who you are anymore as a kid. You don't have to do that or be there. I mean, that address no longer fits your purpose and your passion, your destination. So journaling has been a great resource for me. Therapy, definitely have gone to therapy and talked some things out. There's some other things. I've actually created my own different exercises or templates. So there are certain activities that I do, like I create my own mantras. I do some vision board planning. Like, I just do different things that really recenters who I'm supposed to be, opposed to who I was. But then when it comes to the sexual violence in a different area, I'm a researcher. So my dissertation is focusing specifically on sexual violence in the Black community, specifically at HBCUs among Black women. But that, to me, is part of the healing process, because it helps me understand where this came from. And I don't, so again, I'm different. So I'm not like the average person. I don't believe that our Black men are inherently violent towards us. I think it's part of what is learned behavior, because it goes back as far as slavery, to where they were forced to do certain things to us, and then it's passed down. And we're talking about disenfranchisement, you talk about segregation, discrimination, racism, all these different things play a part into how they treat us. So in that aspect, and me being a researcher, I'm healing because I'm recognizing that that's a learned behavior. We have to unlearn things that were taught to us, that was really taught to us for survival purposes. We don't have to do those things anymore. So that has been part of my healing, to where I can recognize this is historically integrated within our minds. It's not in our DNA. Our DNA is to be lovers and protectors, but yet our mind, our communities, has been played or fed, the seed was planted 300 something years ago, that this is what you have to do to get what you want. And no, so it's been different things, but it's the research part has definitely helped me understanding a whole lot of stuff when it comes to sexual violence in the Black community.
One of the things I love about this woman here is that she goes from this personal kind of process of healing of journaling to where you're educated on some historical context that you may have read, you may have been taught in school, maybe not. And then you just are like full, like, okay, so I got my soul spoke to, then I got my mind spoke to, and that's why I love her so much. Once again, if you're just joining, we're on Journey to Healing, part 2 with soon to be Dr. Zakiya Brown. I'm calling it, putting it out there because it is coming. The founder and CEO of Pivotal Growth Consulting. And so we're talking about her journey to healing and how she has navigated the space and the journey of sexual violence that she has experienced in her life, and how she has continued to work through and overcome those various experiences. So Z, my question now for you is, why do you think the healing process is hard for people to begin in any area of life?
Because we don't want to address it. We want to. So for some people, it's having to get over the victim mindset. These things happen to me, and we stop there. It happened to me. Then for some of us, it's if I begin to heal, who am I? Is my voice still powerful because I've been able to use this pain and trauma to be heard? And if I no longer have the pain of the trauma, then who am I? Then there are some of us who don't have a clue where to start, because our lives has been so layered with trauma. And it's one of those things of like, it's like if you were to do laundry, if you like me, I have to figure out where I want to start when it comes to doing laundry. Do I want to do the whites, the darks, whatever the case? And at some point, it just I just throw it all in there. We're going to figure it out. And if it dies or whatever, we'll figure that part out. That's the concept. Like some of us are like, well, where do I start? Because I have layers of trauma that's been happening to me to where I don't know where to start. And it can be overwhelming, especially if you feel like your entire life has been things happening to you. At some point, you're like, I just don't want to do this anymore. So that becomes a barrier. It becomes either a roadblock, or it just delays the inevitable. I'm a believer that we all deserve to heal. We all deserve to live a life that is full, that is purposeful, it's intentional, it's full of joy and happiness. But if we're still sitting in our trauma and our pain, then at some point we never reach that joy. We never reach the purpose. We never reach the fulfillment, because we're still holding on to everything that has happened to us. So I think it's a combination of different things as to why some people don't get there. But a lot of it is we have to be ready to do it. If we're not ready, it's not going to happen.
I love how when you were talking, it made me think how it's almost like the notion of we carry around the backpack and everybody sees us with the backpack, and it's like we start dazzling it up. We have the backpack matches every color of outfit we wear, and we carry it around, and it becomes a part of us to where when people see us without it, it's like, is that so-and-so and such and such? And it's like choosing to disassociate yourself from the thing that you've been carrying for so long, because you don't need it. You don't need to carry it anymore. It has defined you for a period, but it's time to cut it off so you can now, redefine who you are through your own lens versus through the lens of the experience that you've had.
So my favorite quote, I'm going to say it. Can you tell me who you are before the world tell you who you should be? I'm going to say that one more time. Can you tell me who you are? Can you remember who you were before the world told you who you should be? And that's the same thing. When the world told you should, Black women, again, the world told us we're supposed to be resilient. The world told us we're supposed to endure pain and get over it. The world told us we're supposed to be seen and not heard. Like, the world told us all these different things. But then before we even get a chance to say who we are supposed to be, when we come out of the womb, the world has already told us who we are supposed to be. We never get a chance until we actually find our voice to say, this is who I'm supposed to be. This is who I want you to know me as. And that's the biggest thing when it comes to trauma and pain. You're becoming more of what the world wants you to be, because the stuff is happening to you and you're responding and developing and molding and becoming whatever is a result of that pain and trauma. But don't you want to be more than that? Don't you want to be who you were intended to be? And many of us feel it within our own spirits that I'm meant to be so much more. I'm meant to do so much more. I'm meant to be somewhere else, happier, more free, not confined to either an 8 to 5, 9 to 5, or not confined to having whatever it is. But yet the world has told us this is your place. And because this is your place, you're supposed to go through all these different things to make yourself either valid, seen. I don't know how they justify it. Either way it goes, it's once you start recognizing that I deserve so much more than what I'm experiencing and going through and holding on to, and let that go and begin the healing journey, then you begin to tell the world who you are, who you're meant to be, who you're going to be. And it changes even your circle and who you interact with, how you show up, how you speak, how you dress. It changes in so many different ways to where you begin to see your full self in a different light, the light you are meant to be a part, to be seen in, and the light shining down on you has a different hue. It has a different color. It feels different. It glows different, and people can see like, girl, you look, what's changed about you? I let go of that pain. I no longer allowed you to tell me who I'm supposed to be. I let go of the trauma. I let that where it was. I went through it, but yet I'm done. I went through it. That's the point, to go through it, not to stay there, not to put up shop and everything. It's meant to get through. So I did that, and here I am in full glow.
I love it. I love it. I love it. This is so powerful. And I mean, I don't know if you're able to like see the different comments that are coming through and how freeing this is for people, and knowing that all of us have had various journeys in our life, and some of us are in the process of being healed. Some of us have had total healing and deliverance from certain aspects of trauma, and then some of us have not yet started the journey out of the fear of what that may mean. The people we may decide to disconnect with, the people we may end up meeting, the people that we may have to bring and get involved in the healing process. And so before I, once again, deviate your question, that I have, like, who have or how have you brought others that are close to you in the healing journey? Because it seems like at different points in your life, you have experienced the sexual violence all the way as far back as like the 13 or 16 age. And so there's different relationships you had then and then even now, but who all or how did you or have you brought others that are close to you into your healing process?
So I had to check to see who's watching. So it's twofold. In some aspect, I brought people in because they were the ones who caused the trauma. And it was important for me to bring them in because I needed them to recognize that what they had caused was one of the reasons as to why I was becoming who I was. But even in that, they were able to begin their healing journey because they recognized that they had not healed. They were experiencing generations of pain. And they were able to begin their healing journey for us to be able to have the uncomfortable conversation to begin that process together, to be closer and have a really good relationship. I have brought other, so I really, so through Pivotal Growth is where I've been able to do a lot of the healing work that I really want to do. And a lot of my people I've worked with has been women, because I think I can't say that. A lot of people I've worked with has been women. However, I've also done workshops where I really want to bridge the relationship between men and women, Black men and women specifically. So even like last summer, I had a chance to host, what was it called? I forgot the name of it, but it was a workshop where I really wanted women to talk about what we do as in causing pain and trauma with our Black men. So how are we showing up in ways that is unhealthy, that is toxic, that is perpetuating certain ideologies that are not indicative of who we are as individuals, as people, as a culture, as a diaspora. So I brought us together to talk about what are we doing? How do we continue to perpetuate this dysfunction that's going on amongst us to where we cannot figure out how to have healthy relationships with our Black men? And at some point I plan to do another one with the men, because I want men to do the same thing, because you have all these different people on social media and everything else. And it's like, you have people who take pride in bashing us, one another, Black men and Black women, who take pride in being publicly open about how we feel about our dysfunction in our own community, but yet you don't see as much when it comes to how do we heal each other? How do we support each other? How do we undo what we were taught in that dysfunction to make our relationships better? And in that essence, I've even done that when it comes to talking to young men in the work that I do about healthy relationships. Who taught you how to date? Where did you learn intimacy? Where did you learn how to express interest in someone? And those are ways to start that healing process. I had one, and this one sat so dear to me. I think it was last year around this time, I had a young man tell me that he learned he was beginning at the age of 18, he was beginning to resent Black women because of how his mother treated him. That says a whole lot. And he was able to recognize that at 18 years old, he was saying, I have these issues with women because of how my mom talks to me, how she treats me. So that young man was saying, I need to heal already. I need to catch it now. If I don't, I'm gonna end up not where I'm supposed to be later in life. But who's talking to the mama? Who's talking to her, letting her know that her baby is seeing that what she's doing, how she's treating him, is determining how he will show up for his future wife or whomever his life partner will be, and then how he will treat his own daughters if he has daughters. So that's where like the healing journey is like, I'm community based. I want to work with our community. We got to get it together to where we collectively are working to restore, repair, rebuild, reignite, energize, protect each other to where we can begin our collective healing. That's who I brought with me. I'm bringing the Black community with me, because I recognize, again, the things that I had gone through was learned behavior. It was taught to them. It's not inherently in them. They learn at watching certain things. They learn at, again, going as far as back in slavery. I'm bringing us through this process with me.
I love this. Oh my goodness. I just love it. I think that is so amazing, and taking the experiences that you've had and deciding like, how am I going to help others not end up being like causing trauma towards others, because they're getting the healing themselves, and then also working with people to not actually become offenders of trauma, which is so important. I have just two more questions. I won't deviate anymore. So 2 more questions for you. If you could go back and speak to your 13-year-old self, what would you tell her about the path ahead of her?
Oh, man. I would tell her you were built for this and trust the process. Because thinking back, again, we have so many people who aren't here anymore because of what they had gone through. And that wasn't the path that was created for them. So for me, I was built for this. And I'm built for it because I'm also, God just has a plan for me. So I would just tell her, trust the process. It's going to hurt. You're going to cry. You're going to want to give up. You're going to ask God, why me? And he's going to reassure you with every turn you make, why you. Just trust the process. Because where I am right now, Father God, if it was not for him, it was not for him.
That's so profound, because I always think about if I could ever have like a Back to the Future moment, like would I go back and tell myself, oh, don't do this, don't do that, but then realizing and recognizing that every decision that I have made, mistakes and all, have led me to where I am today, that we're in this space having this conversation, being able to pour in the lives of other people. And so I thank you for sharing that, in particular, that what you would say to yourself. I love that you're built for this. And that's one of the hardest things for people to actually recognize and realize, that there are things in our life that has happened to us, and they've happened because of, once again, other people's traumas, other people's pain. They've then caused pain, but then also knowing that there are things that God has trusted you to be able to go through. And that he's with you every step of the way, even when it doesn't feel like it. Recognizing and realizing that he's right there holding you up, keeping you from not, taking your own life or taking the life of somebody else because of all the trauma and pain that you have been through. So that's so important. My last question for you is, or comment, if you can please share any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you would want others to know who may be facing similar journeys that you've gone through, or other healing journeys.
I'll just use one of my tags for my business. You deserve it. You deserve to live the life you desire. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be free. You deserve to experience joy. You deserve to heal. You deserve the life you desire. So whatever that it is, trust the process, find that courage, take your time. It's messy and it's uncomfortable, but you deserve to live the life you desire.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I want to once again thank my friend, my sister, Zakiya Brown, the CEO, founder of Pivotal Growth Consulting, for joining us this evening on part 2 of Journey to Healing. As I said when we started, I wanted to share some of the various ways that you can connect with Zakiya via Instagram, Facebook, and Z. If you have other ways that you want for folks to connect with you, please feel free to place those in the comments as well. I can see you put your website. I'm going to show that for folks. So please visit her website, connect with her. I promise you all, I would never bring anyone on a platform that I did not trust and did not truly believe in what they bring and what they offer. And she has personally helped me in my life. So I even more so can speak to how she has poured into me. Z, lastly, are there any announcements or upcoming events that you may be having that you will want others to know about?
No, I'm trying to get through this doctorate, y'all. So I do have a podcast, and it is on hiatus until I am officially Dr. Brown. So if you have tuned into the podcast, just bear with me. Some episodes there, they're a little dated, but I need to get this dissertation done. But the podcast is called Sankofa Experience Podcast, experience without the E, capital X. You can find it on all platforms. So if you are Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find it there. It's called the Sankofa Experience Podcast. Once I will have some things coming out in 2022. So my other initiative is called the Sankofa Experience Healing Project. And that's really the community-based healing. That is where we are focusing on the Black community so we can figure out how we can change the narrative from Black women feeling unprotected by Black men and Black men feeling demeaned and degraded, emasculated by Black women. I want us to have those narratives and those experiences wiped out of our vocabulary and our mindset. I'd rather for us to figure out how to love each other, go back to our original purpose, intentions, our roots, where we love and protected each one another. And there was never no competition between men and women. It was one unified bond that we had as a Black community. So the Sankofa Experience Healing Project will have some things coming out in 22. But if you're interested in working with me, my website is there, Pivotal Growth Consulting. It is life coaching. It is focused on healing. It is focused on removing barriers out of your life due to fear. So if if there's something holding you back and you had that mind, that thought, I'm afraid because I might fail or what people might think, or I might not be good enough, you got that idea for a reason. That thought was planted there for a reason. You were created for a reason, and you can't show up if you do not remove the barriers out of it. The other thing with that too is all of what we were created for is for somebody else. So if you don't show up, somebody else cannot show up in their purpose. And I'm saying it again. You were created for a reason. You're created. Your purpose has a purpose in this world. Someone else cannot walk into theirs if you do not show up. So that's where I really work with individuals to help them understand you got to walk into yours. There's somebody else waiting for you. And I've said that and I've experienced it. If I knew there were people, if I did not walk into mine, I have some clients, some mentees, some great people, some business partners that if I didn't walk into it, they couldn't have walked into theirs. So somebody's waiting for you to show up. And I can work with you to help you show up for what you've been called to do.
Wonderful, wonderful. So please make sure that you visit Zakiya's website. Stay tuned for all of the amazing things that she will be doing. I'll once again, before we leave out, post up the various social media handles. I encourage you to follow all of them, and then you will get the most up-to-date information that Zakiya will be bringing out. So once again, I want to thank you all for joining us this week for Journey to Healing, as well as if you currently follow the Refreshed and Revealed pages. We have the Refresh Bible Study on Wednesday mornings at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time. Please, go back and review this recording, the one we did on Tuesday with Amanda, or the Refresh and Revealed Bible Studies, whatever it is that you feel that you need in this moment in time. But thank you so much. We hope that this was a blessing to you in some capacity. So have a wonderful evening and continue to embrace and trust the process of healing for your life. Good night.